2, 3, 4.
Arts and culture summits the airwaves. This is the Nine Rails Arts Podcast. I am R. Brandon Long alongside Todd Obendorfer, and we are the Banyan Collective, arts and adventure podcasting since 2010. This episode includes an interview with Angela Brown, Executive Director of Craft Lake City. She's also the editor of Salt Lake Underground Magazine, or SLUG, also joined by her longtime friend and former Ogden City Councilwoman, friend of Banyan, Amy Wicks.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking, but we gon' do what they say can be done. We got a long way to go, and it's short time to get there. Hey, I'm eastbound, just watch old bandit run.
All right, so coming up this weekend is the first ever Craft Lake City Holiday Market. Todd, are you ready?
Yeah, I am so squared. Okay, so this is Saturday, December 7th. You were asking a minute ago. It runs from 11 to 6 p.m. It is at the Monarch, right in the heart of the Nine Rails Creative District. You get to come and say hi to us.
Yes.
And about 4,000 of our friends.
closest friends, of course. Yeah.
And so I would get here sooner than later. You're going to be parking at the library. This should be an amazing day.
Yes, there is parking across the street for those wondering, but it's going to be huge. Craft Lake City Holiday Market. So this is an opportunity for you to come check out the Monarch building and all of the creatives who reside here with their studio spaces, their creative spaces inside the Monarch building. That'll be open. That's just a fraction of the vendors who will just take up the entire rest of the building.
Oh, yeah. The people that are kind of based out of here is just a small piece of what you're going to see.
Yeah.
You're going to see them line the atrium. They're going to be in the gist of the building. They're going to be upstairs in the ballroom, royal room.
Yeah.
You're probably going to see them over by the bathrooms. You maybe perhaps set up in the bathroom. Those are really beautiful bathroom stalls. But this place is going to be completely rocking on Saturday, and we will be here.
We got to know a little bit about the creator, Angela Brown, behind the scenes. How did this happen? How did she get to Craft Lake City from a magazine, which is SLUG magazine,
which we talked about a lot too?
Yeah, so
She's
this is
got
kind
a lot
of
good
a behind the scenes of SLUG, and then a real behind the scenes because her high school friend is a friend of Banyan,
Friend of ours,
longtime friend of ours, close friend Amy Wicks, former Ogden City Councilwoman Amy Wicks, and those two together, they have stories.
We got a few good ones out of them as well. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the behind the scenes of how this weekend was kind of put together here, this Craft Lake City with Angela Brown right now on the Nine Rails Arts Podcast. Are you introducing?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to. So, do we know what episode we're up to on this one?
No, I really don't know. Just Craft Lake City first annual holiday event. Angela Brown, Executive Director.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been Executive Director?
11 years.
11 years. Well, I guess that's kind of a nice loose opening right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us in Banyan 1. That's what we're calling our 1960 camper trailer that is in the Banyan Collective studio inside the Monarch building, which is inside the Nine Rails Creative District, which is the name of the show. So we started the show about a year and a half ago. It's the Nine Rails Arts Podcast, and we are telling the stories of those that are working in the Nine Rails Creative District, and let's be honest, just the arts and culture show. I mean, that's kind of what we're going for. So we are happy to have you, Angela Brown.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for coming up. And this is actually perfect because we're reaching immediately quicker and quicker into Salt Lake, which is fantastic. And so what you're doing, bringing Craft Lake City. Earlier today, I couldn't come up with words. I kept calling it Salt Lake Craft or something like that. But Craft Lake City.
Don't get fancy with it. Yeah.
Winter Market at the Monarch. And so let's kind of immediately go into that, and then we'll kind of go back a little bit. But how did that conversation start? When did you find out about the space? Did you know did you know before the rest of us? You probably did. How far back ago did you find out you're going to come here?
Yeah, so WB's, the owner of WB's is Amy Britt,
Who's wonderful.
and who's amazing and a good friend. And she's been a great friend of mine for a number of years and one of my clients on the SLUG magazine side, because besides being the executive director for Craft Lake City, I'm also the executive editor for SLUG magazine. And so knew Amy for quite a while. And when she opened up Pig up here on 25th Street, of course, came up and ate, and anytime I'd be up here, I'd be up there at Amy's joint. And so she got to know Thane Fisher from the Monarch through her leasing, her space for Pig and the Jelly Jar.
So when she was being wooed, you were part of that.
After
Amy.
I was after the woo.
Okay, after
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
The
so-
second wooing.
Yeah, second wing. So she mentioned, she was just like, hey, you need to meet this guy Thane, and vice versa. She told Thane that I needed to meet him because he had the Monarch at that time, but just, was unsure what to do with it. I think at that time he knew he wanted to involve artists, but didn't know how. And so we had a couple of different conversations. He actually came down to my office in Salt Lake and met me. And then, a couple emails, a couple phone conversations over the course of a couple years. And then, nothing really developed. And then about 2 years later, maybe a year and a half, is when he hit me up again and was like, hey, we've got a concept together. Let's talk. And simultaneously, with Craft Lake City, we've been around for 11 years now. And almost...
Congratulations, by
Thank
the
you.
way. That's impressive. 11 years
you.
is great.
Thank you. Well, and ever since we did our first festival back in 2009, people have been asking us to do a holiday market because our big DIY festival happens the second weekend of August. And, the creatives they really love our event. They love how well organized it is. And so they wanted us to do a holiday market, but we weren't ready. Being a small nonprofit that we actually bootstrapped it for the first 7 years where none of us got paid, including myself. And so it was really a big labor of love. And I just knew we just could not take that on. And so now flash forward where we are today, this, we finally have this really great team. We've got a healthier budget, although it could still be a lot bigger. And it just felt right to launch the holiday market. And so when I was talking with Thane, I was thinking, like, how can we work together? And it just became evident that this is the place where we should launch it.
And then when was the first time you saw this building?
Oh, actually,
Did you take a pre-tour, or was it one of his sort of, what did he do? He did a series of hard hat tours, I remember, towards the beginning.
Did both. So I did a pre-tour before the hard hat tours. But, again, that was when we'd connected kind of after a couple of years. So I didn't see it back then, after he'd first purchased it.
Oh,
he
gotcha.
told me about it and was trying to get me to come up to see it. But it was also, when we were talking at that time, it was my busiest time of the year, which is the summertime when we're getting ready for the big DIY festival. So it was like, I can't really come up right now.
So now that you know you're coming, what do you think of the space?
I love it. Love it. And it's been fun to see it grow and just to see it change. We've been up here a lot over the past 3 months, and it's just rapidly changing every single day. And which has been kind of a challenge with planning the holiday market, planning the event, because the event space is literally changing all the time. But also it's kind of fun and dynamic. And I think that's slowing down a little bit now that the openings happened. Versus, our first layout for the market we had, and we're feeling really good about it, and then came up a week later and had to completely scrap it and redo it just because walls were in different places that we thought they were going to be. So.
And now, which dates do you have set aside for the winter market?
So it's just going to be a one-day event from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. And it's Saturday, December 7th.
December 7th, which will be perfect for the holidays. And you are using every inch of this place that you're able to.
Yes, every single inch that we can.
And so what was the process, and we'll focus just on this winter market, what's the process of applying? How long was that open? How was the response? And then I'll sort of follow that up. I'm curious with how much Ogden representation we have with this, or if it's a lot of the Salt Lake community, or if it's how much that changed as far as your group that you're going to be working with.
Yeah, so first off, we're really excited to have all of the 40 studio spaces for the Monarch invited. We're still kind of filtering out, getting responses from who specifically from the Monarch team, the resident artists here, such as you guys.
We'll be here.
Yeah. So far, I think we have around 25 to 30 confirmed, but we're hoping to get all 40, or at least close to that as possible. And then, but back to your question about who we're bringing up. So we are actually able to bring up around 91 artisans, which we're really excited about. So 91 plus that 40 is going to be, quite a nice segment of talent for people to go through for 7 hours for a 7-hour market. So I think it's going to be really jamming in here. But with our application process, we probably solidified our deal with Thane beginning of summer this year, so probably in about June. And then we started making arrangements and did an open application process that opened, I think it was September. It was September through October. And we really didn't know what to expect. At first, we were looking at around 72 artisans, but we had just a huge pull. We had over 250 people apply, which was, for a one-day event, that's huge. And so, we had to turn down a lot of people, which is why we've been back up here, measuring and being like, can we get another artisan in here?
Because you want to squeeze in as many as you can.
We do, and people want to be in. We got so many emails from people that were really disappointed that they couldn't be part of the market. So we've got a long waiting list, and we want to get as many in as we can. Just all different types. As far as region where they're from, I would say about 60% were artisans and creatives that we've never worked with before. So wow. Which is great. And about half of those were from Ogden or the surrounding areas. And so we've got, I would say, about 30 to 40% outside of the Monarch studio artists that are from northern Utah.
Oh my gosh. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But then we're also going to be able to see some Salt Lake artisans as well.
Yeah, some Salt Lake artisans, some people from down south.
Because they're going to be so excited to be up here in this space.
Yes, they are. And that was, another reason why Thane really wanted to work with us is he wants the community down in Salt Lake City to really understand what's happening up here in Ogden and with the Monarch, and, to really foster that creative culture and climate for the future. And as, Salt Lake becomes more and more expensive and creatives, get priced out, Ogden is a really great option, and there's a really great creative scene here. Of course, with the university helps.
Absolutely.
And how do we retain that talent? When people graduate, why they shouldn't move away, right? They should invest in their community here.
I should mention that Amy Wicks is on the microphone as well, our good friend of the program. Amy, what are you doing right now? And not me right this second.
Sitting in a trailer.
Sitting in a trailer talking to you.
But 9 to 5-ish right now.
I work for Utah Foster Care Foundation. So I make sure that there are diverse parents to meet the needs of kids in the northern region that are in foster care. So basically North Salt Lake up to the Idaho border. I'm responsible for making sure we have foster parents for those kids. So that's my day job. And
that's a great day job.
That's a really
Is that
important.
a satisfying day job?
It is incredibly
satisfying. Is it
satisfying.
happy? Is it ever sad and anxious? And is it mostly...
Sometimes there's worry. You worry about the kids in care and making sure that you have families who can help those kids work through the trauma that they've experienced in their lives. But
these kids have seen some... They've seen some shit.
They have. Most of the kids in foster care are there because of abuse or neglect. But it restores my faith in humanity. Like every day, I meet people who are willing to do amazing things for kids they don't know.
And we all need that reminder.
Yeah.
That restoring of the faith, especially.
Yeah, it really does. So I consider myself very fortunate to be able to work to help kids and to help. People are able to sometimes build their family through foster care, and you just see kids progress and be able to do so many amazing things in their life because somebody is willing to step in and help care for them.
Well, I love that you do what you do. You've only been doing this particular thing somewhat recently.
5.5 years.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's longer than I thought.
Yeah, my previous job, I was there for almost 18 years.
That's
probably.
That's probably what I'm more focused on is that old job. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for making this happen as well. You and Angela are friends from
church camp.
I was going to probably let that go, but I'm not going to let that go. So tell me more.
Yeah, this is a whole... I was not expecting that.
This Nobody is the spin-off
does.
Story I was hoping for.
Nobody expects church camp.
We were recently both at the same concert the legendary Pink Dots, and we stayed after and met Edward Caspell and told him that, and it blew his mind.
The look on his face was priceless because I don't think he pegged us as church camp ladies.
I don't know. Maybe you still go to the same church camp. I'm not sure.
It was a pretty cool church camp.
Yeah.
It seems like
It
they
would have to
probably
be,
are.
yeah.
I remember going to a church camp. I went to church camp once. I think that was right around the end of my tenure with church. But I remember having a really good time. I didn't make these kind of friends. I'm trying to think back, because that's what you hear about is kind of those connections. It's kind of a blur to me. But how long ago was that?
90s.
We're going to date ourselves. I think
We don't have to.
I've known Angela for close to 30 years.
Okay, that's the number I was
So
going for.
we were teenagers, and the camp was in Colorado. So I grew up in Bountiful, and we'd meet with another group with the Holiday United Church of Christ and hop on a bus and go to Colorado a couple times a year for this camp. And I'm still friends with a lot of people from this camp.
I absolutely love that.
La Forêt is the camp. It's in the Black Forest in Colorado, and it wasn't really churchy. It was more arty.
It was definitely arty.
Yeah, it was more arty than churchy.
Is it still around?
Yes.
Cool.
In fact, one of my friends from there, Sean Bundy, was married there, and I had the chance to go back there a couple years ago for his wedding.
That's
so
cool.
that was cool.
I think that's a movie right there, is going back with your friends to revisit this old camp.
Yeah.
I think that's probably been made. I don't know. And so give me a little bit of a snapshot, because Amy, I've obviously known you for a very long time, but I'm getting a sense with Angela, the two of you as teenagers. Now, obviously, we're attaching church camp in with this scenario, which threw me just a little bit because I wasn't expecting that. But were you good kids as teenagers?
I was kind of like this purple-haired hippie goth girl that cut class and went to a lot of punk rock shows.
So that's
That
good.
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Did we describe both of you?
Pretty much.
And I think a little bit older than Angela, or I had my driver's license before she did, so sometimes
Which is handy.
Yeah, I'd pick her up, and I had a 1975 Volvo was my first car. I'd pick her up in the Volvo, and we'd go to shows.
So, Angela, this had to guide you a little bit towards what you ended up getting into as far as the magazine and the
Yeah.
program and everything. When did you
Definitely.
start SLUG? What was the kind of catch us up on the Salt Lake Underground?
Sure.
And when that started, and obviously your involvement now, has it always been? Did you help start it? I don't know a lot about SLUG.
Yeah, let me tell you. It's been around for 31 years.
Okay.
And so I grew up reading it, kind of about the same time that I met Amy and was going to the Black Forest for this cool church camp. And
And it had the same sort of culture then as like the
No,
content
different.
for the magazine?
It was very different.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very different time back then, in a lot of ways.
It's like the tail end of SLC punk.
Exactly.
I
Yeah, it's a
remember all
great
of
way.
that.
Yeah.
Great way to describe that. And I grew up in this very conservative LDS family, the youngest of 6 kids, very, very Mormon parents, Mormon siblings. And so when I first kind of discovered SLUG magazine, it really opened up all these doors to me. Like, wow, this is what life is really like, or it can be like. And how I even was able to go to church camp, because it wasn't a Mormon church camp, right, was I stopped going to church at a young age, at about age 12 to 13. And my parents, being good Christian folk, were like, well, okay, if you want to stop going to church, you at least have to go to some other church. Like, it's okay if you stop going to Mormon church, but you need to go to some other. So I would hang around with other friends and be like, can I hang out with you on Sunday? Because I really don't want to go to my church. And so that's actually how I was brought into that fold. But yeah, anyway, so back to SLUG magazine. Yeah, so 31 years. That's when I started reading it and really getting into that. And then I started working for record companies in just out of high school and doing freelance photojournalism. And I was actually hired by the second publisher of SLUG, because the guy who started it sold it to another person. And then that person hired me to be his managing editor after we'd met, when I shot a cover for him.
And how old were you at that point-ish?
I was
Even if it's
21.
an ish. Okay.
I was 21.
That's a fantastic
That's a great
gig.
job
Yeah.
for 21.
It was great. So I worked for him for 2 years. And then after that, I actually simultaneously had another job, two other jobs. I was working for another record store. And then I was also what was called a college representative for Polygram music distribution. And this was a large distribution company for record labels, like back in the day, like Geffen Records and like, I can't even remember all the brands now, but there was like 20 different labels that we represented. And so I was working to get a promotion with them and move to San Francisco. And which I finally got that promotion. I just had to graduated college, and got the call that I was eligible, and they offered me a job to be what was called an artist development representative. So that's where I would work with all the new bands that were just hired and come up with marketing campaigns and help them plan their tours and things like that. So I was gung ho.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. It was a really great opportunity, and this is like 2000-ish, right?
Uh-huh.
So I made an appointment with Gianni Ellefson, and he was the second publisher. And I gave him my notice. I was like, hey, I'm taking this job. I'm moving. Here's my 30 days. I'm moving out of state. And he was like, no, why don't just take over the magazine? Like, you've been running the magazine anyway. You should just take it over. And he's like, don't say yes, don't say no. Just think about it over the weekend, because it was a Friday. And he's like, we'll talk on Monday. And you should really just do this. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, this is an interesting opportunity, but I really want to get out of Salt Lake City and, go to a bigger city that has all the amenities that I'm really interested in. And, working for, like, in the music industry is kind of a dream. So I took a meeting with my dad, who was an entrepreneur and had owned some businesses. And I thought, well, if I am going to consider this, because I promised Gianni I would consider this, I need to talk to my dad. I need to tell him I'm getting this, that I'm going to move to San Francisco anyway. So we had lunch that weekend, and I told him, and so I was like, okay, so this is the deal, and, this is the opportunity, and this is what I want to do. And he was like, well, let me tell you something that may affect your decision. I was like, okay, yeah, what's that? And he's like, I've got this family secret, and the family secret is that I have terminal cancer. And he just couldn't tell anybody. He'd known for a couple months and just had no way of, telling my family, just didn't know how to, like, really reconcile that. But hearing that I was going to leave, he was like, well, all right, it's time. So that was actually kind of a blessing that I was able to help him kind of admit that. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm staying here, staying here. And so it was a really good decision. So I stayed here, took over the magazine, and then helped transition him over the course of a couple years to the next veil. And it was a good experience. And that was 19 years ago. So I've been running the magazine now for 19 years.
And so
I know, right.
When you came in with SLUG 19 years ago, what did it look like then? What did it look like the year after? Did you kind of slowly make some changes in that?
Yes.
As far as like an overall format, what did a magazine look like the year that you got hired?
Well, the year that I got hired, I was actually the longest lasting employee of that publisher, because he had a very strong personality. Let's just say that. And so some people didn't know how to negotiate that. And I was able to do that and feel just fine with that. But nowadays you look back on some of that content, and it's kind of a little dodgy,
Okay.
Like what I mean by that is, there's a lot of really great interviews with, great bands. Like there's an awesome interview with Kim Gordon, back in the day.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty neat stuff. It's great stuff in our archives, but some of it is just kind of misogynistic. I was the only woman in the office. It was a really small office, but even with the team, we've always had a team of volunteer writers, and, only a couple women would ever get involved. Just kind of that it was hard. It wasn't really welcoming, I guess you could say, in that aspect, and very judgmental. That's one thing that I love about kind of the underground really just being exploded nowadays. It's really hard to have like an underground scene because of technology and because of accessibility, versus like back before we had, the internet. You had to work really hard to be part of that culture. Like you had to mail order stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to read magazines and do all this research. Go talk to people at record stores. Versus now, you can just watch some YouTube videos and spend a couple hours researching and know like everything you want to know.
Same thing goes with distributing anything that you have as well. Yeah. And the fact that you've always maintained, and I assume it's always been really important to you to maintain that printed copy as well.
Yeah, and it still is. And it's interesting because, as we've, adapted and, tried to innovate and stay relevant, right? And Salt Lake Underground has kind of shifted between. In the beginning, it was all about local music. We still cover a lot of local music, and then it kind of changes with each publisher. So the guy who started it was all about local music, and then the next publisher, Gianni, his was more about national music. And then I kind of made a little bit of a hybrid. For a number of years, about 10 years, it was all music focused. But now, and then again, how technology and Napster and Apple Music, Spotify, all that's just broken open music. The accessibility is there for everyone, which is great. It kind of made that coverage a little irrelevant. Pitchfork, all these other sites where you could read all those interviews. So
and you have instant access to all those as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's when we started really going back and redefining Salt Lake Underground. What is that? It's about local, right? It's back to not just local music, but local business owners, about people that are really trying to make positive change in their community. And so that's what we've been focusing on for the past 5 to 10 years.
And how has let's talk a little bit about your team. What's your team look like?
Yeah.
Do you have a good group in play?
I have the best group in play.
How many people do you have working with you?
On the SLUG side, including myself, there's 7 full-timers.
7 full-time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
And 1 part-timer. And then on the Craft Lake side, because we share an office, and on the Craft Lake City side, there are, it's kind of funny because we have this illusion of being this huge organization, because around festival time, we staff up to 62 contractors, paid contractors, and then we kind of collapse into our year-round team, which is right now it's 2 full-timers, 1 almost full-time, and then about 3 other part-time.
And that's just for the Craft Lake City that happens once a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Well, we also do workshops. We do monthly workshops. And of course, now we do an annual holiday market in Ogden.
Twice a year now.
Yes, you do. Absolutely. What's your idea of success for a brand new location like Ogden?
What do you mean? Sorry,
can
you restate the question?
What's like, this was a really good choice
setting
up in Ogden for this. What does that look like? What's a successful day look like?
Oh, a successful day. I mean, the first part of success for me is to make sure that our team is having fun.
Yes. I love that. Yeah.
Because we work really, really hard. I mean, especially on a one-day event like this, like our call time, we're going to meet up here at 5 a.m. And then we're probably going to be working till midnight or 1 a.m. Right. And then of course we meet the next day and, then 2 days after that for cleanup. So we've got to make sure that we remember why we're doing it. And that's that, we have a really fun time together. We love what we do, which is, once we open doors and the public starts coming in and the artisans are making sales and the vibe is high and people are just enjoying what we've put together, that's why we do it. It's just kind of
love the feel of that.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. We got a little bit of a taste of it. We did a soft opening on the first Friday of October, and the turnout was, we were just beside ourselves. It was just incredible. I'd never seen that many people come to our Van Sessions event and being able to talk to so many new faces and starting to see, even with the October, which before we officially opened, to see so many people coming from outside of Ogden, from Salt Lake, and even past Salt Lake to check out this space that they've been hearing about for a long time. And then, of course, the grand opening for this was just beyond expectation. It was incredible turnout.
Yeah.
And so just that energy, I can't wait for your event.
Thank you.
Because you'll be feeling it like nobody has.
Yes.
An event like that will be the first time.
It's our goal too. Well, and that's the magic, right? Is when you get all the people in and they can experience it together. And with the opening, I think Thane was saying there's around 2,500 people that showed up.
It might have been closer to 3,000 people.
Yeah, it was hard to count. I think there was a guy at the door with the clicker, and he's like, "There's no way I'm gonna."
Because they all came in, tired.
And he's like, "There's no." He looked at me because I was right by the door next to him, and he said, "There's no way I can count all these people." But
then we also had people coming through Art Box and WB's as well all night that end up in here as well, and so I think it is a perfect match. I think we're all very, very excited about that. And so the fact that you straddle these 2 very successful projects, keep yourself sort of sane between the 2? How do you split your time?
Yeah, it's Craft Lake City actually started as a SLUG magazine event. So the very first year of the festival in 2009, it was a SLUG event. And then after that event, I could very quickly see that it had the ability to become something different. And so I guess because of that, I've always had them part of my life. And so I guess as far as splitting time, it's dictated on who needs it. So, and luckily, the way that it seems to work is that sometimes SLUG will need extra time. For instance, maybe we'll have to fire an employee or someone that needs to transition off the team quickly. So the SLUG team might need a lot of extra help until we can staff that. So I'll spend more time on the SLUG land. And then with Craft Lake City, maybe the same thing. Or maybe we're doing something new, like starting a holiday market, which will require more time. So really, I guess it kind of wherever I'm needed, I spend more focus. But I try and, as much as possible, do a 50-50. Because I love the work on both sides.
I was just going to ask, you still love everything that you do.
I do.
It really does show. You still get just excited about local music? You try to follow that as much as you can?
Yeah, I don't, I'm not as active as I used to be. I think
Brandon and I say that every now and again.
Yeah.
I mean, as
all the
far as
time.
going to events and things like that, especially because I think the busier that we get, the more we're covering the things that we'd like to go to. There may be less time going to the things that we used to be able to go to.
Amen. I mean, that really happens we do an event called Localized, and it's one of the first events that I brought to the table with SLUG. And one of the things with SLUG is I wanted it to be more than just a magazine. Growing up here as a local, there was nothing to do except for to go to punk rock shows, which was great.
But we had all these all ages venues, and we were so fortunate to have that. And you'd see things like Nirvana opening for Dinosaur Jr. at the Pompadour. Like,
that's a good memory.
Yeah. For, I think it was like $8 or something like that. We were very fortunate to be in Salt Lake at that time and have all of those great venues.
Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to echo that, because there was a long time where those venues closed down and there wasn't places for the kids to go or things for them to do. And, but yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah.
And it is very satisfying to be part of that. We've been doing our van sessions for some time now, and of course, all ages thing. But just seeing that honestly ridiculous level of talent, but struggling to necessarily find a place to play and a place to enjoy, and their friends to be able to come and enjoy it and everything. Yeah, that's one big wish I have and I know that there's some things in play here in town to kind of increase that, but I think that we all get behind how important that is. Because I missed that. I am lived in Salt Lake for a very long time, but as far as Ogden goes and some of that all ages, all those venues, a lot of those were already gone by the time I got here.
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to the most? You got any other projects, like sort of ones that you can't talk about, but
Yes,
something that
always
You
stuff
should
that we
just talk
can't
about them now. Yeah. Now's the time.
more festivals, more events. I imagine that you don't sit still, and I don't mean just sit still on the projects you're working on, but always
I'll give
want
you
to
some
sort of
teasers.
innovate something.
I'll give you some teasers.
I would love that.
So, we're doing this first Ogden event with Craft Lake City, and providing that goes well, we might launch a different event, completely different, up here as well next year. But I can't tell you any more than that.
Okay, well, we're going to turn this off and I'm going to find out.
I should mention there's cocktails during the event, too.
There is cocktails.
So, yeah.
Roosters and Ogden Zone are going to be here, and they're going to be selling cocktails for just $5, which is a very reasonable price. They're doing some sort of heavy beer as well as like 2 or 3 types of beers, and then they're collaborating with Ogden's Own to do a beer cocktail. And then Ogden's Own was also going to be serving some signature cocktails.
With
And
5
so-
wives.
So what kind of artisans anybody that hasn't been to a Craft Lake City before, what kind of work are we going to see?
Yes, so this event is a little bit different than our DIY festival. Our
Okay.
DIY festival is 3 days, 20,000 people over those 3 days, around 270 artisans. We've got a Google Fiber STEM building. We've got 2 stages with over 50 bands. We've got workshops, on-site workshops, a VIP area catered by Harmons. We've got it's a really big experience. So this is pared down quite a bit, where it's actually just focused on the artisans and on the kind of the venue and the creatives. But some new things that we're doing here that we've never done. Of course, we haven't done the beer cocktails. We haven't worked with Roosters on the Craft Lake side, or 5 Wives Vodka and Ogden's Owns on the Craft Lake side. Didn't work with them on the SLUG side. So excited about that. We also are doing a Santa, which should be cool.
Like he's in town.
Yes,
Yeah.
Santa's coming to the event. We booked him.
I can't wait to see your Santa. This is going to be a special Santa Claus, yeah.
Yeah, and that'll be free, of course, which will be nice. So
And then is there a small admission for this?
It is, yeah, $5.
$5.
So that $5, in fact, I mentioned earlier that the Graphic City organization, essentially we all worked for free for 7 years. And really, and that part of that was because the festival was free. It was a free event for 7 years. And then at that point, I really determined that, we've got to start paying ourselves or else we're got to stop doing this work because it's, just for obvious reasons. So we started charging an admission charge of $5. And so what that $5 does is, and now it's $7 for the DIY festival, but that allows us the ability to pay our team. It allows us to hire 61 contractors for the DIY festival, allows us to pay the bands, all those things. And so with the holiday market, this will cover our quote unquote overhead for producing this event.
Sounds perfect. Okay, so while I have the both of you and the fact that you've been friends for 30 years, I'll give you just a second, but I got to hear a story. I need a story. The church camp was great, but I need a story. I'd like a story where a little mischief was involved. That would be great. It doesn't necessarily have to be jailed or something, but if it involved music, that would be fantastic. You got anything?
Oh, it looks like they both look like they have something. It's just whether or not they want to. Well, they want it out there.
Should we close out the show and do it after?
You have to pay extra for that. $10 a month will get you these.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Did you ever sneak out of your house?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, Angela would sneak out of her house.
It would.
And you lived up Immigration Canyon, and she'd sneak out of her house, and I'd pick her up and take her to concerts.
It's true.
Especially because you were driving maybe a year before.
Yeah,
or something
because
like
I was the bad influence. But
that time period with music was brilliant. So you had a lot of bands to see, a lot of musicians to see.
There were a lot of, there was something every weekend. Mm-hmm.
And they were all coming through. Give me a few names.
Oh, well, like I mentioned, we saw Nirvana open for Dinosaur Jr.
Which I love both of those
Yeah,
bands.
Which I'm sure Dinosaur Jr. has that whole tour in their living room now still probably.
Well, and it was funny because I remember going to the show and it's like, who is Nirvana?
Yeah.
Oh, what great memories.
Bunch of jerks from Seattle.
Oh, gosh.
Well, yeah. Rage opened for the Lollapalooza in Ogden, and nobody knew who Rage was.
Yeah.
So.
That's
yeah.
right.
I do kind of remember that.
Yeah, we got there as they were in the middle of their set and was just thinking, what are we? Do we miss the memo? What's going on here? Yeah, these guys are good. So.
They're getting back together, you know that.
I hear.
Yes.
I hear, yeah.
Yes. Oh, I am definitely seeing that band.
Well, we had so many venues. I remember I was probably 14 when I first went to the Painted Word, which is...
Okay, so tell me about the Painted Word.
It's around the corner from... Do you know where Tin Angel used to be?
Yes.
So it's on the west side of that building. Okay. There used to be the Painted Word and Ranch Records.
Mm-hmm. Record store.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of weird for me going to Tin Angel because you would sometimes still hear bands practicing. Like I had friends who had practice space in that building as well. But that place was totally different when I was there as a 14-year-old.
Oh yeah, and the viaduct was still there too.
Yeah,
so it was under the viaduct.
That's which is perfect for when you're, a teenager. That's absolutely perfect.
Well, and fun fact, the guy that was booking a lot of the shows at Painted Word was J.R. Rupel, the guy that started SLUG.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why he started SLUG was kind of like a means to promote his shows and also to promote his bands because nobody would write about his bands.
Yeah.
That is exactly the best way to do it. You start your own thing. Yeah.
You start your own venue, and then there was the Speedway Cafe.
Okay, tell me about the Speedway Cafe.
Oh,
I feel awful. I don't know.
It was cool. Like it was kind of anarchy. Brad Wheeler was a bouncer there. I think solely because he was
picture that a little bit.
Tall for his age.
Where was that one?
That was also kind of. It was by Salt Lake Nut Company, I think.
Yeah. And I think was it under a viaduct
It was under a viaduct as well.
They were all under viaducts.
They were. You'd go past the Jesus Saves sign. And they had a room where you could bring your own alcohol. Mm-hmm. I think if you were 21.
Cool. It was like the brown bagging laws back then.
Oh, wow.
So...
You can't do that as much.
Yeah, you really can't.
But most people just did it in the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was this for both of you? What was the first show that really just changed everything. Like it was just connected to you in a massive way. Or maybe what was the first biggest show you've ever went to? Like just a band that was just, you felt honored to be there, even as a kid. Do you remember one of the first big shows? See, I think one of the first big shows for me, one of the very first big shows was Paul Simon. I saw Paul Simon. And that would have been like 14 or something like that, maybe a little bit younger. But one that where I made it connected in a big way. Like I felt just, even at 14, I felt super honored to be there. Do you remember anything like really big like that?
So many.
Yeah.
Somebody where music was such a part of both of your lives.
Well, and they used to have things at Park West.
Yep.
That were kind of, some of the bigger, more recognizable bands.
Like Morrissey used to play Park West.
Yeah, he actually showed up for that show.
Wait, yeah. So is that a meme now that he just doesn't show up for any of his shows?
Well, he showed up the last time he played at the Eccles. What was a year? It was right after Trump was elected, and I wasn't in the mood to be depressed, and and I remember
Morrissey,
you go to that show, and it was just like, what a downer.
Yeah.
But you will also be impressed. There were 2 former Ogden City Council members at that Morrissey show.
Nice.
Oh.
So Caitlin Gochner was there with her husband Greg.
It's always good to keep that in check.
Was totally
yeah.
shocked.
But
to
he
see
did play
her there.
Park West. I
Yeah.
remember going to that, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, big bands like that
Yeah.
were there.
And there were shows at the Fair Park too, and a building that's no longer around, the Coliseum.
Yeah.
There were shows there.
Yeah.
Fugazi, I saw Fugazi there. That was good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. Where was the Coliseum?
At the Fair Park.
At the Fair Park.
At the
Okay.
Fair Park.
At the
So it was a venue at the Fair Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
like a historic venue that they tore. I think they had to tear it down because it was falling apart.
Yeah, it was falling apart.
Sometimes it gets to that point.
Well,
There's no question.
and they had things at like the Indian Walk-In Center.
Yeah.
Before the Painted Word, before Speedway Cafe, and then there was the Pompadour after that was in a church.
I have so much to learn, and I absolutely love it. We'll have to do this again sometime. We'll kind of
Love
wrap things
to.
up just a little bit. Thank you so much for coming up
Yes.
to Ogden.
Thank
Your
you.
second home for a while.
It is my second home.
We absolutely appreciate it. If it's all right, let's do this again sometime.
I'd love to.
Okay. Well, I wish you all the success with Craft Lake City Winter Market. We'll be here representing the Banyan Collective.
Holiday Market, yeah.
Our doors will be opened up. So thank you. And thank you, Amy, for coming, and thanks for setting this
thank
up. I
you.
appreciate it. You guys have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, put a bow on it. That is a wrap for episode 21 of the Nine Rails Arts Podcast, produced by the Banyan Collective Arts and Adventure Podcasting since 2010. Do not miss an episode of the Banyan Collective's Nine Rails Arts Podcast as we explore what it means to be an adventures creative in 2019 and looking forward to 2020. Hear the stories of Ogden's new Nine Rails Creative District, including those of the district's epicenter and home of artisans, designers, and creatives here at the Monarch Building. Follow the Nine Rails Arts Podcast on Facebook and also on Instagram at the number 9 for Nine Rails. And for more from the Banyan Collective, simply search the Banyan Collective on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. This week we'll leave you with a little something from Van Sessions as recorded live during Ogden's First Friday Art Stroll at the Monarch Building. In the heart of the Nine Rails Arts District, this is the Heavy Bucket Band.
Yes, this last song is a cover, and this is one that I should have mentioned when you asked what would I be listening to in my car.
Yeah.
Because I think all of us feel the same way in this band about the band Clutch. And
Okay.
We all love them, and what do we do? Like,
Is this
3
like a
of their
true
songs?
cover? How do you approach this? You take some artistic liberty with it?
Yeah, a little bit of an artistic liberty, and it's Clutch. Actually, it's an old blues song from the 30s, so they used some of the vocals or some of the verses for that.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's probably their biggest hit.
And this one requires crowd participation.
Oh, crowd
Yeah,
participation.
This one does.
I like
yeah.
that. All right.
Yeah,
Sweet.
you guys know what
All
to
right.
yell out.
Yeah.
You know.
I like it. All right. Yeah, take us out. One last song.
All right, this one here is called Electric Worry from Clutch. And I always tell Nady this. Will you make me weak? And you make me moan? Will you cause me to leave, child, my happy home? By someday, baby, you ain't worry my life. Well, if I hit money like Henry Ford, Lord, I'd have me a woman, yeah, on every road. My someday baby ain't worth my life anymore. We had a great time here at Van Sessions. Thank you to the Banyan Collective for having us out. Thank you to this beautiful band that I've got here. Thank you to all my friends that came out here tonight. This has been a great experience and a good time for sure.
Yeah!
Thank you so much.
Heavy Bucket Band on Van Sessions.